In this video, we're going to see how a top candidate plans their answer, how they write and structure it, including the thesis statement to help them map out what they're going to say, and how the examiner reacts. So at the end, you will understand how to control what the examiner thinks and what mark the examiner gives you. The title of the essay is How is Hyde Presented as a Mysterious Character? And it comes to us from a really generous viewer, Albor Zabutalebi. This is the plan he wrote in the exam. Now, what's important about this is he's just written down the high value content that he knows is going to get him top grades. So he knows he's going to write about existentialism. If you don't know about that, pay attention. Determinism, same deal. The juggernaut. This is something that you will be able to use in every single Jekyll and Hyde essay. It's brilliant, grade 9 context. Pay attention. He knows he's going to write about duality no matter what the essay, and he also knows he's going to write about homosexuality no matter what the essay, and the key vocabulary he's going to use there is homophobic. He's reminding himself that he needs to use alternative interpretations. He probably didn't need to remind himself of that, but you can see this plan has taken him probably 30 seconds to write, and that is perfect. He's also set down a reminder to himself of how long he's got. Remember, in 2022, you were allowed 50 minutes. In current years and all subsequent years, you will only be allowed 45. Well, I've typed the essay up so that we can read it more easily. Here is his thesis statement. In the 19th century novella of Christian morality, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Jekyll, and subsequently his alter ego of Hyde, is presented as mysterious in order for Stevenson to argue against Christian prejudice, through philosophical standings of existentialism. I didn't know what that meant either, don't worry. While connoting there is duplicity in all of us, including the duality of caged homosexuality. So he's done what I always recommend, which is to have 3 parts to your thesis statement. Part 1, he's arguing against Christian prejudice. Part 2, he's going to look at existentialism in order to show that. Part 3 is he's going to link our dual nature to duplicity. And as part of that, so this is really almost a 4th point, isn't it? He's going to write about homosexuality. So you can see how his plan has helped him write his thesis and how his thesis tells the examiner the plan for the whole essay. Now that's important. You're controlling the examiner's mind and you've already told them that you're going to write in depth, in detail, with lots of interesting interpretations. So the examiner already wants to put you into the top 2 bands. Early in the novella, while Jekyll's caged atavistic demeanour is embodied in Mr. Hyde, he steps on and almost murders a little girl. Hyde is said to have been like some damned juggernaut. While the adjective damned implies eternity in Christian hell, the noun juggernaut connotes the pagan god Jagannath from Hinduism. So here comes the grade 9 context, which you will be able to use every essay, because you will always be able to talk about this moment when Hyde tramples on the girl. It will really be relevant to every single question. In a ritual, Jagannath would be placed in a wheel and would roll over many devotees willingly stretched on the road underneath. In this context, Hyde is embodied as the heretical god, so heretical means non-Christian, and rolls over his innocent victims, the little girl and Carew. So the examiner has been convinced that this context is relevant, and they award it level 3 for context, AO3, but they've also looked at the single word analysis in the quotation and decides that this is also some explained comment for AO2. Now all this means is the examiner's looking for more of the same sort of quality, looking at other quotations in order to bump up the levels. This godlike demeanour of Hyde is further expressed when we learn that Jekyll mastered the alchemy to create such an entity. Hyde is also said to have trampled calmly over the girl. So, if Hyde is like a god, he has succumbed to the violent atavistic nature which was within him as connoted by the direct juxtaposition of trampled and calmly. So atavistic here is a word that you can steal. It means to go back to a primitive state. So this is the idea that Hyde is like an earlier form of human evolution. In the same scene, the doctor, Sawbones, is said to have a desire to kill him. This is the antithesis to his oath of saving lives, and Stevenson does this to connote how everything has a dual nature caged within. In essence, man is not truly one, but truly two. So Albors again knows that this quotation, man is not truly one but truly two, will be relevant to every single essay, so he's committed it to memory, but he's also committed what he wants to say about it to memory. Now the examiner likes the way these quotations have been linked together. And linking quotations together automatically puts you into level 4, clear understanding and explanation. Interestingly though, it's also got level 4 for AO1 references to the text. So we can see getting in these quotations early is an easy way to get top marks, and you can count how many there have been. So far we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And all of those are quotations that he knew he was going to use no matter what the question was. That's the genius of the way Albors has planned before he's come into the exam. As Jekyll succumbed once again to his dual nature, he performs yet another violent act towards Sir Danvers Carew. So this makes it easy to jump around the text. You've got the theme of violence, and so it's easy to jump from trampling the girl to chapter 4, where Sir Danvers Carew gets killed. However, Carew, a man of old world kindness, is said to have pointed at Hyde with a pleased look. This may have been to imply homosexual attraction to Hyde, and Carew could only have practiced such blasphemous behaviour, in a Christian context, on such a vile brute as Jekyll. I think that should have read Hyde, but I've reproduced what's in the exam. This dual nature of the homosexual is portrayed as negative, much like the negative personification of violence that the animalistic Hyde performs on him with ape-like fury. Again, these are quotations that he will have memorised and knows that he wants to put in, even if this is the extract he's writing about. This parallels homosexual desire with brutal violence, which gives the novella connotations of homophobia. This may have been to please his Christian readership, who would have grown to believe that any homosexual act is gross indecency, as stated by the Law Amendment Act passed in 1885, 1 year before the novella was published. So this context about the Gross Indecency Act is linked to an interpretation, and once you link it to an interpretation, then you're showing the examiner you're perceptive and that your answer is therefore thoughtful and needs to go in the higher mark band. So the examiner's graded this level 5 for AO3 context. Now most teachers probably don't know about this act, and many are reluctant to teach the theme of homosexuality because they're worried about how their students will react, but this is 100% legit and you can stick it in your essay. Enough teachers have now seen my videos or read my guide to spread this interpretation, so there's enough examiners who are happy to accept it, but they'll only accept it if you link it to an interpretation. If you just bung it in as something you know, it will get no marks. Now I go a step much further than this and show that Stevenson was not homophobic, and so the plot of the novel shows how he's in favour of homosexuality. But that's not for this essay, but you can check that out in other videos or my guide. Alternatively, Hyde's animalistic retreat towards violence is due to Jekyll creating him with pure malevolent evil. So, he lays his eyes upon the elegant man with old world kindliness. His instincts force him to obliterate the happy Carew, audibly shattering his bones and subsequently his soul, as the maid described it. In existentialism, the second tenet states existence precedes essence, meaning one's nurture will overpower one's nature. In other words, your environment and your experiences overcome what your inner nature is like. This means that Jekyll is constructed so that we can see he is forced to create Hyde due to his Victorian upbringing. In other words, he creates Hyde in order to get to his true nature and get over his Victorian upbringing, which is his nurture. This portrays Hyde as a quintessential characterization of Victorian England. Therefore, the vile action that Jekyll is complicit in as he inclined to Cain's heresy, as Utterson lets him go to the devil in his own way, is not Jekyll's fault, but by Victorian England rotting every connection. So this is a paragraph that didn't fully make sense under exam conditions, and the examiners basically given Alborz the benefit of the doubt here. They like how many references to the text that there are that have been analysed, and so this now gets level 6 for AO1. So if you want to understand existentialism a bit better, you need to read this section here. I'm not going to go through it because you don't need to know about existentialism at all to write about this text, but if you want to, there it is. Now Alborz goes on to contrast existentialism to deterministic philosophy, and he's going to tell us what that is. So however, in deterministic philosophy, it's physically impossible for Hyde to do wrong. However, as Hyde is supernatural, he possesses the power to have come out roaring from the cage of deterministic truth, meaning he can alter the matrices of the universe, meaning his heinous acts of violence were truly Jekyll's fault, as he mastered the heretical alchemy which Lanyon so despises. So in deterministic philosophy, there is no right and wrong. You're basically conditioned what you're going to do. So Wikipedia tells us that determinism is about the idea of free will and whether we're actually predetermined to do things or whether we can control how we act. Alborz is arguing that Hyde can't control how he acts, he's just following his nature, and that's okay. The true fault then is Jekyll for creating him. And he's created him with a heretical alchemy, an alchemy that goes against God. So the examiner now has decided this is worth level 6 content because it links moments from different parts of the novella together with context about the time, and therefore the examiner is starting to find this convincing. Further on in the first paragraph of the extract, Mr. Hyde had disappeared out of the ken of the police as though he had never existed. While Hyde disappeared, Jekyll's true self started creeping back upon him, slowly edging him to let go of his deep and dark desires. So that doesn't really get any marks yet, it's just talking about the plot, but the interpretation is going to get us the marks. For a Christian reader, this would signify a struggle for heaven towards Christian morality. Now notice that we've no idea what the extract has been here. It could have been the trampling of the girl, it could have been the killing of Carew. And the reason we can't tell is because Alborz links his quotations together and he's memorised in advance the ones he wants to use. So I asked Alborz, what's the deal with the extract? You're told to start with the extract. Most teachers tell you to start with the extract. I always tell my students, don't start with the extract because if you do, you can't write a convincing argument. And this is what he wrote back. I remember my teachers always telling us to start with the extract, no matter what. I learnt from your videos that examiners would not penalise you for not starting with the extract. And since I had envisaged what the core of my essay would be about, it was easier for me to be able to start with the rest of the play or novel so that I could start writing faster and end with the extract to link some of the other points I had planned. So that's the genius. He's managed to write a convincing argument, which is a higher skill, but he's found it easier because he hasn't had to start with the extract. This was especially helpful for me as I did sometimes struggle starting an essay with the extract, and it was easier for me to talk about what I'd already prepared. That comes back to the planning we looked at the beginning. So you can see how Alborz has made the exam much easier for himself with this method. However, Stevenson himself rejected Christianity, so much that he resided in the pagan country of Samoa, suggesting that he might be less prejudiced against Hyde's desires. Perhaps Stevenson himself is projecting how he too can have a dual nature, where he has first presented himself as the godly Jekyll and later on as Hyde. So this is a brilliant context linked to interpretation again, but because Albors has already got level 6 of AO3, the examiner doesn't need to grade it. The examiners are super generous to you, so once they've got a comment in the level, then they don't look for any more. They'll look for one in AO2 and one in AO1, so they can grade the whole essay in that level. 2 lines later, the semantic field of violence is introduced yet again with callous, violent, vile. Examiners love a semantic field. It's not just a useful bit of vocabulary, it forces you to link vocabulary together, and that's always at least thoughtful and probably convincing. So this foreshadows Jekyll's descent back to his evil nature. Jekyll can only keep this positive demeanour for so long before being consumed by a great flame of desire, which Hyde experiences. He is portrayed as the essence of evil in humanity. This reference to Hinduism further connotes that the omnipresent being of Hyde represents the omnipotent constant of evil that humanity will never overcome. Later in the extract, the semantic field of time is once again used, firstly to imply the eventual death with the passing of time, and secondly to present time as a constant, because with infinite time all actions are not only possible but inevitable. Hyde embodies the worst of the worst, the vile acts that humanity brings. So personally, because there's no quotation here, I'm very sceptical of these constant references to time and Albors' explanation. However, the examiner doesn't take any marks away for stuff that they don't agree with or that doesn't make sense to them. As you know, examiners love that semantic field, so they give Albors the benefit of the doubt again, and they assess this as level 6 AO2, analysing the language of the text. So this scored 29 out of 30 in the exam. The bits that's missing for the examiner is task, answering the full task. And what they've decided is Albors uses slightly too many words to explain his ideas. And this is important for you to grasp. So Albors has written 884 words, but if he didn't try to show off his vocabulary, he could actually have written this whole essay in 700 words, which would mean he'd have 184 words left to develop even more of an argument. And so the best way for you to use this essay is to rewrite bits of it in your own words, keeping it more simple. If there are ideas in here that you don't understand, just get rid of them. So that you too could write this essay in 700 words, have that in the bank, because what are the chances that you're going to have to write about Hyde in the exam? They're pretty damn high. You can't write about Jekyll without writing about Hyde, and you can't write about any of the themes of the novel without writing about Hyde. So loads of Albors' ideas here you'll be able to steal. Now, if you want to work from a copy of this essay with all my examiner comments, you can find it in the link below. And if you want to know what the top quotations are for every single question on Jekyll and Hyde, check out the video appearing here.